Welcome to the Content Matters podcast, where digital content and marketing pros talk shop. Tech may be changing fast, but great content is timeless. Get inside tips, trends, and practical know-how from the top minds in the digital content industry. Sponsored by Ingeniux, the uniquely agile content management platform. Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. Today I'm joined by Kris Laird, who is the Director of Sales Development for Ingenix, the sponsor of the Content Matters podcast. I invited Kris to join us to share his insights and experience on sales development strategies and technologies. Prior to working with Ingenix, Kris actually spent over 3 years at Outreach, which is probably one of the most well-known sales engagement tools in a emerging sales tech industry that is growing like crazy, and it's actually a very fascinating industry to kind of pay attention to. Kris learned a lot during his time there and actually rose up the ladder pretty quickly to play a key role in the growth of the company. We talked about marketing and sales alignment, which is really critical, I think, for any kind of company to move forward these days, to have those two teams working tightly together. We talked about all the different types of sales technologies, particularly sales engagement and sales enablement, but Kris also went through the sales tech stack, which, if you think marketing has a big stack, sales does too. But you should also know that Kris spent over 10 years as a music educator, and believe it or not, the time he spent as an educator has helped Kris figure out the best approach to engaging with customers and prospects. Actually, I think it's a really good background to be a marketer as well, and he kind of went through some of his ideas there and actually talked a little bit about his musical background, which I thought was really fun. So with that, I'm going to let you listen to the podcast. I think if you're a salesperson trying to grow in your skills and experience, this is something you really want to listen to. And if you're a marketer trying to understand sales strategies and techniques, because I think that's important that you do understand that as a marketer, you should be listening to this podcast as well. Enjoy it. I know I had fun recording it. Tell me about your role with Ingenix. Tell me what you do.
My position with Ingenix is the Director of Sales Development. And what that basically entails is about a year ago, I was hired and brought on to develop a sales development team. And part of that was building the process that the sales development team would follow to begin an outbound sales motion for the company. So prior to me coming on board, the majority of the business traffic was mostly inbound, lead-based, and the leadership saw an opportunity to create an outbound push for the sales team to be able to go out and find new business. So that's been my role the last year, is to refine the current processes when I came on board, and then build out new processes for the outbound team, and then recruit and hire our first set of sales development reps, or SDRs, to put that process into action now for the team. And they're just wrapping up their first month of being on the team here at Ingenix.
I know things have definitely changed a lot since you came on board and started implementing your programs. It's been really actually exciting to see kind of how that whole process has worked out, and it is working out. So your sales career started Outreach, and they are a sales engagement company. They started kind of modern sales development. What was it like working there, and what kind of are the key takeaways you took from working there?
It was an amazing experience. You say it's, I started my sales career there. It was kind of like if you decided that you were going to play a sport and your first experience was playing in the NFL, like, when I didn't realize it at the time, because the company was still very young. I was employee number 52 at Outreach, and there were people that had been hired before me that were no longer there by the time I got there. So we were still a pretty small company at that time, and I was brought on as an SDR, sales development rep, with no prior sales experience. But it was we always called it the rocket ship, because the speed of which things were iterating and changing and growing and developing at Outreach was always at hyperdrive speed, which sometimes was pretty intimidating, especially for a young salesperson. But at the same time, I didn't really know any different, so that became my normal. But when I started working for them, it was in January of 2016, and they had just finished their first year of sales, quote unquote, like real sales with a sales team. And they were at about $2.5 million in revenue. And our goal for the calendar year was to get to 10 million. Which, looking back on it now, to quadruple your revenue in 1 year, I would be like, holy cow, that's impossible.
Yeah.
But we did it. And what's really interesting about it was, at that time, Outreach did not have a marketing team. They had no official marketing uh, department, no VP of marketing. The sales development team was also the marketing team in large part. So we had a huge list of accounts that were dispersed across the sales development team. And it was our job to reach out to people in those accounts and get the word out about Outreach and what sales engagement was. Um, so we were kind of serving two important, fulfilling two important needs in the company at the time. Um, and I remember, like, back in that day, Outreach was just a mere shell of what it is today as a platform. But a lot of the people we would talk to would say, wait, who are you? And what is sales engagement? I don't even know what you're talking about. In fact, there was a period of time we called it sales acceleration, and people were like, well, I don't want to, I don't like that term, and we switched over to sales automation. And people were like, well, I don't want to automate my sales team, like that's replacing humans with robots, and I don't want to do that. Finally, the market space emerged to sales engagement. Um, so it was like standing out above your other tools that a lot of companies already have in place for sales teams, like Salesforce, which is your CRM, and your marketing automation tools like Marketo or HubSpot. Um, so we were kind of defining a new space in the industry as well, which was really exciting. But as I said, started out as a sales development rep, and about 6 months into that, we got to the point in which we hit our goal for the year. We had a company goal that if we got to 8 million, we were all going to go on a trip to Mexico for a reward. So that was kind of the big celebration. But we kept our foot on the pedal and ended the year by just about quadrupling our revenue in 1 year. And by the end of my first year there, I was already promoted to a sales manager position where I was leading a team of SDRs in the Pennsylvania office. And my manager was tapped on the shoulder to move to Seattle to start a sales development team on the West Coast, because the company was growing at such a rapid pace and had plans to continue expanding. So that's how I stepped into the manager role. And again, here I am, basically 8 to 9 months into my sales career, and I'm managing a sales development team for what was then, one of the fastest growing startups in the sales engagement or in sales space. So it was really interesting. But as I worked there for, I worked there for almost 3.5 years, and I quickly realized that the pace at which we were changing and growing and transforming was never going to slow down, because that was part of what we were selling. We were selling modern sales development. And if we were out there saying that our platform could do that, then we had to drink our own Kool-Aid. The sales team had to use Outreach as its key tool in our stack to be able to generate results so that we could leverage that information in the conversations we were having with other companies to help them see the value in sales engagement. But also, companies started to look to us for advice and thought leadership as to how to stand up a sales team, how to structure a sales organization, what tools to use, what tools to equip your sales team with to be more successful and generate that rapid pace of revenue influx. So we were kind of on the hot seat, so to say, in terms of just having to always be one step ahead of where market tendencies were and kind of leading the pack in developing new procedures and processes to help teams continue to grow. So it was really, really a neat experience. And to be a part of that team that went from about 2.5 million in revenue my first day on the job to almost 60 million by the time I left, and I think they're close to 100 million in revenue and valued at over $1 billion now. It was really a really cool experience to be on the inside of that and see all that developing.
Is that why someone referred to it as working in the chocolate factory? Because it grew so
Yes,
fast?
yes, exactly. And I think too, you think of that old Lucille Ball skit where she worked in the chocolate factory and she had to it was moving so fast she had to eat the chocolates and stuff them in her hat. Like there were days where the leadership would come to us and say, "Hey, we're going to try something new. Here's our idea," and the management team would say, "Oh, great. Okay, well, when are we going to start that?" And they would say, "Well, we want to start tomorrow." So it was like, okay, engage. We just had to really operationalize things pretty quickly. Um, but it was neat because the leadership had that kind of fail fast mentality. Like we're going to try things and we're going to kind of give it all of our attention and huddle around it and put all of our brain work into it. And if we fail, we fail fast and we iterate and move on to a new procedure, a new policy. But I think that sounds like a pretty risky way to run a business, but we had some amazing leadership that had years and years of experience developing sales teams and working for companies like Microsoft and Google and some of the top names in the tech space. So not only were our developers developing a product that could deliver quicker than anyone else, our leadership team also had feet on the ground experience in that kind of environment growing up in their sales careers and development careers to be able to guide the company in that direction.
It certainly sounds like it was a crazy but exciting times for you. So outreach is called a sales engagement tool, but there's also the term sales enablement, and I always kind of thought outreach was sales enablement, but they're not the same thing, right?
Yes, yeah, I think in some terms, you can kind of see some of that cross pollination in those market spaces. But for us, when we worked at Outreach, we looked at it as its sales engagement tool, strictly because the way we would kind of pitch it to people that didn't really understand the space, we would say, well, your CRM is your system of record. That's like the system of truth for all of your records, your accounts, your leads, your contacts. But you need a system of engagement on those records, and that's where outreach comes into play, where you now manage all of your engagement with those leads and contacts and accounts in one place. So instead of using your cell phone to make a phone call, using Outlook or Gmail to send an email, using a spreadsheet to manage your list of prospects and accounts, and using a Google form to manage your templates for your emails, you put all of that in one place in Outreach where you can manage all of that, all the touch points and the intervals between those touch points and all those engagement steps with a prospect and then even when a prospect becomes an opportunity, you can manage your opportunities in outreach. And then the term sales enablement kind of started to develop around the same time, as well as another set of tools that basically help sales reps become more efficient. And in terms of like having resources at their fingertips, but also having the ability to do training, in-depth training with your sales team. So when you think of sales enablement space, one tool that comes to mind is Showpad, which we use Showpad at Outreach as our sales enablement tool. And what we used Showpad for was it was kind of a database for all of our digital assets that we would use within our sales process. So the SDRs had access to use cases in Showpad that we could send out as links, and then we could see how our prospects and how our customers were engaging with those assets. What pages were they viewing? How much time did they spend viewing the pages? Were they even viewing the pages? But we could build like lists of assets that were kind of commonly used, and we could send them out as part of our sales development process. But then our account executives also used Showpad as an enablement tool for them to house all of the resources and documents that they used when they were doing their product demos, their follow-up calls, their technical evaluations. Those were the resources that like our sales enablement team would be able to work to publish those resources and then push them out to the sales team, which was spread across the United States through one tool, which was Showpad, that sales enablement tool. And then the third component of it is the ability to set up and run trainings on that content and those documents internally, so that you could ensure that your team was all getting the same uniform training on how to use those tools, how to use those resources, how to use those PowerPoint presentations in their sales cycle, so that the message was consistent across the board. So it's a little bit more in terms of like almost like a learning management system, as opposed to a sales engagement like email, phone call, LinkedIn engagement tool. So that's where the two market spaces kind of differ.
And those are like the two key technologies that I guess you would use in sales, I guess, along with a CRM, of course, to kind of engage with your prospects and your customers.
Yeah, those would be at the key when you think of it. You've got your CRM, which is kind of at the top of the pyramid, which is where you house all of your information that's relevant, and you can manage other parts of your business out of your CRM as well. And then as that pyramid comes down, you've got other tools that would fall into place, like your marketing automation tools. You've got if your website's a key component in your marketing plan, then you've got your website and your content management tool that houses all your content for your website. Then you've got your sales engagement tools like Outreach, and your sales enablement tools like Showpad or MediaFly. You've got your data providing tools like LinkedIn, where you can get prospect data information, email addresses, phone numbers. There's other tools like ZoomInfo, which is a company that just went public a few months ago, and
Yep.
Seamless, Lean Data. Those are all tools that help you kind of organize your data and direct them to the right places within all those other tools. And then, of course, you've got your other tools that are kind of commonplace in a business, like your email provider and your calendar tools, your video conferencing tools. So it's quite an extent when you start to think about building out a modern sales team. It can become quite an extensive tool stack that you put in place. When you think about each component of of how you feed information into your sales team. But when you think about how important a sales team is, especially an SDR team, in terms of filling the top of the funnel, which is where your revenue pipeline begins, the cost for that setup and standing up a sales development team definitely proves itself valuable. The ROI and that shows itself in the pipeline that they begin to generate for the sales organization and being able to bring in new customers and add revenue to a company.
It's that's a crazy amount of technology. I mean, even from a marketer's perspective, I know that marketers use a huge amount of technology, but I could almost see a salesperson who's maybe been in the industry and in the role for a long, long time, who was used to maybe making phone calls and email, and that was all they did, trying to incorporate all these new technologies and processes into their work to kind of not kind of, I don't know, freak out a little bit and try to figure out how it all works together.
Yeah, it is. It can be overwhelming, but when you think of the flip side of it, I think before sales engagement and sales enablement spaces really became prominent in the modern day tech industry, sales reps in general managed their book of business off of Post-it notes and
Yeah.
Excel sheets and reminders on their calendars or appointment books, and you think about what was happening to a lot of those sales teams was that the disparity between your top reps and the rest of the reps on your team was pretty big. You'd have the stud, female or male sales rep that was out there crushing it, and then you had the rest of the sales team. And for a manager, you had no reason why you couldn't really pinpoint a reason why one sales rep was better than anybody else. You might be able to say, well, this person does a better job of managing their information in their calendar and their Post-it notes are more organized. But what typically happened before sales engagement tools came along, like Outreach, was that sales reps would follow up with a lead. Maybe they'd send them an email and try to get them on the phone a couple times, but then they would move on to the next good-looking lead and forget to follow up, and those leads would eventually fall through the cracks and be forgotten. Or if you were on the phone and you're driving, from one place to the next trying to meet with clients, and you get a phone call and somebody wants to book a meeting with you, you can't really stop the car and write down that information all the time. So reps would try to remember that and like make a note to follow up with Jill or John Smith next week, and they would forget, and then there's a lead that's gone, and by the time you remember, that company's going to move on to another vendor. So you've got the side of it where leads were constantly falling through the crack, and then you've got marketing professionals that are like, hey, we're generating all these great leads for you for the sales team, and you guys are doing nothing with them. You're letting them fall through the cracks, and then we have to go out and get you more. And then the other side of it is that, again, back to that manager or the director of sales or VP of sales, they have no way of being able to identify why some reps are successful and other reps aren't. They have no data. They just have, maybe some slight observations or gut feelings as to why somebody's better than another person. Well, with tools like Outreach, you've got now a high-tech tool that has machine learning and artificial intelligence that's collecting those insights for you. So not only is it a way for reps to organize their day and make sure that leads don't fall through the cracks, you've also got a tool that's collecting data on how many opens an email gets, whether someone you're sending the email is clicking on any links that you put in the email, what sequences, what designed touch points, we call them sequences in Outreach, which is just a series of touch points over a designated period of time, which sequences are generating the most meetings, and at what point in the sequence are you getting the most replies, so that you can see what's working and then replicate that across your other sequences. What's working across your sales team and replicate that in training across your entire sales org. You can even see what time of the day is the best time of the day to send somebody an email to get them to open it, and what time of the day is the best time of the day to make a phone call to get a connection. Because these are the key metrics that are important to a sales team to be successful. You know, my reps make 50 to 70 phone calls a day. I don't want them spending that time doing it from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the morning if the data shows that the best time to call somebody is between 11 and 1.
Right.
And with outreach, I can go in and look at those reports and say, hey, let's shift our call block 2 hours and we're going to get a better connect rate and we're going to book more meetings. Like that's the other tier to a tool like this that gives you an advantage over other sales organizations. And when you start to think about the number of businesses that are out there competing for customers and revenue, the ones that iterate and build a sales team around a stack of technology that's going to help them be more successful and give them that information, those insights, and that data are going to be the ones that go out and grow the fastest.
A quick pause to say thank you to Ingenix, the Content Matters sponsor. Ingenix is a leading provider of agile content management solutions. You can check them out at ingenix.com. You talk a lot about kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Does your kind of background as an educator kind of help you kind of work in that model? Like, did that help you at all?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I spent 18 and a half years teaching
Oh,
before
okay.
I jumped out to the sales world. And I was a music teacher, and I taught middle school and high school band for those 18 and a half years. And so a lot of people, when they see that I did that for such a long period, they're like, why did you make the jump to sales? And there's a lot of factors that go into it, but for me, being an educator, I thrive on learning. Just personally, it's like something I love to do is just go out and learn new traits, new skills. And I'm very hands-on as a musician and a music teacher. I was always hands-on. And I always incorporated technology in my classroom. Um, so my students were always engaging with the latest music technology programs to be able to help them develop their skills, but also to help students kind of find interest in writing and creating their own music. I taught a class that had 8th grade students composing their own music to perform by the end of the semester. So I was very hands-on with technology too in the classroom. So when the opportunity was presented to me to join Outreach, it was at a time in my career where I was finishing up my master's degree in music and kind of thinking about what the next chapter for me might look like, whether I was going to continue to teach in public schools or maybe start to look towards becoming a higher ed professor and teaching music education at a college or university. So it was kind of great timing because I took a sabbatical to finish my master's degree. And because it wasn't a paid sabbatical, I was able to start working at Outreach to earn some income at the same time to see if this sales job would be a viable career for me. And obviously it took off. But I think the things that I bring in from my education experience is, number one, understanding that not all people learn and process information the same way. So, when I was developing lessons to teach my students, there are some students that are oral learners and they can sit in class and listen to a lecture and they absorb that information and they comprehend it. Other students are kinesthetic learners and they need to be hands-on. You need to give them something, an activity to do to understand the content you're trying to teach them. And other students are visual learners. They need to see it like drawn out on the board or a diagram to really understand it. So when you think about how that translates to sales in the modern sales process that I built out here, that I learned at Outreach and I've built out here at Ingenix, is that you can't just go a one thread approach to selling. You know, it can't be just inbound. You have to do inbound and outbound. It can't be just emails. You need to do emails, phone calls, LinkedIn messages, LinkedIn engagement, maybe even physical mailing, you know, like sending out gifts to, high target prospects or accounts, sending out uh, invitations to events, you know, things like that, where or sending out videos where the sales reps create a video and send it as a link in an email. Like you need the more multi-thronged your approach is in sales, the more people you engage with, because not everyone processes that information the same way. So where you might be able to get one person to sit down and read a lengthy sales email, another person's going to just delete that out of their inbox, but might engage with you on the phone if you catch them on the phone. Or another person might connect with you on LinkedIn and engage with you on LinkedIn. So you just never know what channel you're going to reach somebody through. And that's why a good sales process needs to have all of those components built in and baked into the process. Um, the other thing that for me personally, you know, being a musician, um, that creative side of my brain is constantly on. So I'm always looking at ways to improve the process, ways to improve my own performance, ways to continue to grow in my own skill set. And I think sales is very much in that same vein. Is you've got to be constantly iterating on what you're doing, not reinventing what you're doing, not scrapping it completely and throwing it out and starting over, but iterating. And that's where it gets into looking at what's working and replicating that across multiple threads in your sales process, looking at data to see where you're getting a bump, and then really making sure that you're training the sales team on that, so that they can be really efficient in that area. And just kind of thinking on your toes and responding. As a musician, you know, you think musicians, like great jazz musicians, can do improvisation at the, click of a finger. Um, and sales reps need to be the same way when they call people on the phone, because you never know what kind of response you're going to get, whether you're going to get a hello and I'm interested in talking to you, or a why did I pick up the phone, now I'm stuck on this call, or I really don't want to talk to you and somebody hangs up on you. And you have to kind of be thinking on your toes and ready to respond to whatever situation you might be in, and also what objections they might throw at you. um, as a sales rep, I think it's really important to just be really flexible. And then the last side of it for me is, I think specifically for me, what's really helped my career in sales go from being an SDR to a sales manager and now director of sales development is that I I feel that my experience as a teacher has really helped me to help other people grow and learn how to become an effective salesperson and manage teams more efficiently. Just like I did that as a teacher, helping young musicians grow and develop for 3 to 6 years, depending on which age levels I was teaching at the time. I'm able to help sales reps do the same thing, where they might come into the SDR role and want to eventually become a marketing person, or they might want to go into becoming an account executive and being more of a closer. Giving them the tools to develop those skills to get there someday. Just being able to help people kind of find what it is their true north, and then helping guide them in the direction of getting there throughout their development.
You said something interesting there that I think is good to kind of talk about. Is you talk about how you kind of bring SDRs in, and they kind of decide, where they want to go. If they want to go to marketing, kind of branch out into marketing or to sales, more sales positions. So there's a relationship there, obviously, between marketing and sales. And there's an alignment that a lot of companies really struggle with. But I know that it's critical. I know we do it really well at Ingenix, and I've worked with other companies where we've actually kind of had that alignment really well. But does that mean that an SDR is a marketer, or is that an SDR is sales, or are the two kind of roles or departments so tightly intertwined today that you really don't necessarily distinguish one from the other? Like, how do you look at it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember early in my outreach experience, one of the value points that we used to use in our messaging, especially when we were calling marketing leaders, was that a tool like outreach can bridge the gap between sales and marketing.
Mm.
Because back, even 5 years ago, and it's still very common today in a lot of businesses, is that the marketing sits in one office and the sales team sits in another, and there's not a lot of communication back and forth. But the marketing team is spending, company dollars and spending their time and hard work to generate traffic and leads that get sent to the sales team, but they have no insight into what the sales team does with those leads. How are they following up with them? What messaging are they using? Is it similar to what the marketing team used to get them in the door in the first place? And on the sales side, the sales side in those situations, they're sitting in another office across the building, and they're getting all these leads. And the notorious sales says these leads suck. Like
Yeah.
marketing sending us all these leads, and I can't get them to convert to a meeting or an opportunity. So that means the leads must suck, right? Well, no, they don't. It's just there's no connection between the two departments or the two team strategies to be aligned. So outreach is great because for a marketing team, you can now go into outreach and look at the sequences and look at the messaging that's included in the templates, and in the phone scripts to see what is the sales team saying. What kind of a process are my leads going through after we pass them off to sales to get converted over to an opportunity? And if they're not, then what do we do with them? What have they gone? What journey have they traveled through if they don't convert? And how do we now build a follow-up nurture to that to get them back into our loop again in the future? So I think, in my viewpoint, I think marketing and sales is one entity. And I, instead of thinking of it as marketing and sales, I think of it as revenue operations.
Mm.
Like marketing and sales are both on the revenue generating side of a company. Even though, as we've mentioned in this conversation, that, it takes a lot of technology and a lot of resources, both employees and time to be able to generate leads and convert those leads to sales opportunities. They're still, even though they're taking up that many resources from an organization, the ROI is that they're generating that a much higher level of revenue. So if you have your marketing and your sales team working together as one unified revenue operations team, now you're maximizing the impact that those teams have together, because you've got two leadership teams that are working in sync, and then the strategies are aligned, the goals are aligned, the metrics are aligned, and you're able to better manage those things at each step of the journey so that you can see where breakdowns could be occurring and make changes to improve or increase those metrics in each of those areas. So that's, was a big thing for me. And, being hired in Ingenix and working directly with Dave Hillis, who it kind of steers the marketing side of the business for Ingenix. It's been great because he and I have worked together in lockstep to build this process out for the sales team. And we've talked about how the marketing impacts the sales and the sales impacts the marketing, and merge the two. And, I think, one of the tools that we went out and purchased recently and rely on heavily in our tool stack is 6sense, which is kind of a marketing and sales person's dream tool. And this is a kind of a new emerging tool. When we talked about like sales engagement and sales enablement, now you've got this marketing tool that's coming to the forefront, and they're kind of blowing some of the traditional marketing terms out of the water, like MQLs. 6sense is kind of making a lot of marketing leaders rethink the idea of an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, and thinking more in terms of a MQA, a marketing qualified account. So 6sense is, it's got this whole side of the platform that is a marketing tool where you can deliver, targeted marketing to specific accounts and people within those accounts. And then you can collect data on which of those accounts are engaging with that marketing content. But you can also see which accounts are out there that researching keywords in your market space and visiting your website. And that's really important on the sales side too, because if sales is going to go out and try to sell to these accounts, how better to do that than to understand what those accounts are actually interested in. So on the sales side in 6sense, you can see what keywords are people at these accounts researching. What pages on your website are they visiting? What specifically are they looking for, and what challenges might they have that you can solve? And then the sales team can go out there with really targeted, personalized messaging that resonates with them to be able to get those leads to those accounts and those contacts to convert more quickly into opportunities in revenue pipeline. So I think, a salesperson is a marketer, and a marketing person is a salesperson. And our jobs are now more and more becoming one and the same. And one kind of key indicator of that is 5 to 10 years ago, marketing teams were not held to their conversion percentages.
Yeah.
A lot of marketing teams were, their quota was how many leads can you generate in a month. But now more and more you're starting to see that marketing leaders are measured on their effectiveness, not by the number of leads they're generating, but by the percentage of leads that are converting into opportunities. Just like sales reps are held to a quota of how many opportunities are we able to generate, how many accounts and contacts are we able to convert into a meeting or an opportunity, which leads to revenue. So I think we're being measured on some of the same data statistics now that kind of even make us more in sync than we ever were before.
And that's why account-based marketing is something that I'm a huge proponent of. Say that word right. And so, which is what 6sense is. It's an account-based marketing technology, demand-based, terminus. They're all kind of other. They're similar and they're different. But that technology itself is like, I believe it will become the key technology for marketing, because it does help them kind of target the exact right accounts that they want to reach, that sales want to reach, and it just keeps the two groups so tight together that you should be able to achieve success if you're doing it that way. That's how I look at it anyway.
Right. Yeah. And especially if you're a business that's, an emerging business, or a business that's looking to expand your market reach, what better way to understand what accounts out there are actually interested in your market or your space than to have a tool like that in place to kind of guide you in the right direction. Again, one of the most frustrating things for a salesperson is to continue to beat the drum into an account and get no response. And you know, when I think back to our days at Outreach, especially our early days where we were we were marketers and sales reps at the same time, we were reaching out to accounts that you know, we didn't even know if they had a sales team. You know, we were just trying to get the word out about Outreach. And if we would have had a tool like Sixth Sense or Terminus or, you know, Bombora, those kind of tools back then, it would have really helped us to guide our efforts into the places that were more likely to generate interest because they were at least aware of us at the time, as opposed to reaching out to a company that's never heard of us and may not even have a use for a tool like ours.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So, okay, so last question for you. When kind of fits in with the Content Matters podcast theme. Content is a key tool, obviously, for engaging with prospects, and I've kind of heard you say that you are leveraging a lot more thought leadership in kind of your sequences and your processes. How do you kind of figure out where it fits in a sequence, and how do you know what the right kind of content is to deliver?
Yeah, that's another great question. So yeah, when you think of kind of the two schools of sales engagement, I would say the one side, which what I would call would be the old school way of doing it, was you have a product to sell and you go out and you try to sell it. And all of your communication is, hey, I've got this great product. You want to take a look at it. This is a great product. We're top of the industry. We've got the best product out there. You should come buy our product. The other side of it, the more modern, the new school way of it is, we have this product that helps you solve this challenge, or it relieves this pain you might be experiencing in your day-to-day job duties. And the messaging around that side has to be where the value framework kicks in. Is you're not necessarily out there beating on the door trying to push your product onto somebody. You're out there trying to engage with someone and say, here are the common challenges that we help customers solve. Does this resonate with you? If so, let's schedule a time to talk about it. Let us introduce you to our solutions and services. And if it's the right fit for you and we can help you solve that challenge, great. And that's where I see content really playing a key role in a sales process, is when we design our sequences for our SDR teams to use to reach out to prospects at accounts, we start out with that value message. We want to introduce the company so that name recognition is established, and then we want to follow it up with, here's what we're helping leaders like you in your field solve. Here are the pains that we address. Here are the challenges that we help you solve in your day-to-day workflow and environment. And then you follow that up with some social proofing. Here are some companies like you or like your industry that we're helping solve those similar challenges. So you get some like street cred, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the first initial like introduction email. And then where you follow that up with is then content is really important to be a supporting factor in following up in the forthcoming messages. So as you continue to reach out to these contacts at these accounts to engage with them, you've got to give them something that's valuable for them to want to give you back their time, which is extremely valuable. Okay, anybody in sales knows that the hardest thing to do is gain somebody's time. It's the most valuable resource that anybody in sales has, is time. So when we're reaching out to somebody, we want to deliver enough value for them to say, it's worth my time to speak with you. So that's where content can play such an important role in being able to deliver specific content that not only speaks to their industry, but also supports those challenges that you mentioned in that first email. So for instance, we have a lot of customers in the higher education space at Ingenix. We help a lot of colleges and universities and community colleges. So, we engage with those leaders at those institutions, and we say, here are the challenges we're helping other customers in the higher education space solve. And then we follow that up with links to our website that are specifically designed around our higher education solution, white papers that you've been involved with developing, and videos that we've have produced that are geared specifically toward the higher education space. Because then if somebody in that industry can see that and they have a connection with that, and they're like, hey, we're experiencing that same challenge here, or we have a project where we're trying to improve that part of our digital experience here as well, or, oh, I really like how that university that they featured in this case study was able to solve that challenge. That sounds like a partner I want to work with. That sounds like a vendor that has experience in this space and can really help us. And in an industry like education, that's really important because, street cred is really important to those people that are making the decisions to purchase products and software technology solutions in higher ed organizations. So if you can support that claim with that really value-driven content, then you earn the respect and time that you need to be able to have a conversation with the decision makers at those accounts. So we really heavily rely on that in our sequencing, and that's how we see an increase in engagement with our emails. Our open rates in sequences that include that value-driven content, our open rates are higher. Our reply rates are higher. When we get a conversation on the phone, the people are more willing to have a conversation with us because we've shared something with them that's relevant, that resonates with them, and therefore we've earned enough of their respect that they're going to have a conversation with us and not just hang up on us or blow us off and not reply to our emails. Even if they're not interested, we'll get a reply that says, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out to me and sharing this with me. We're not in the market for this solution right now, but I'll keep this on file, and when a project like this comes out, I'll reach out. And that's what we really want in sales and marketing, is we want that brand awareness, and we want to establish that incremental gains. We want to establish that at least framework for a relationship down the road, even if it's years down the road.
Yeah, because when you sell technology, it's rarely a turn around in a month kind of thing. It's usually a long-term relationship building process to get to that final point.
Right. And the other thing that kind of taking this full circle back to outreach, the one thing that we talked a lot about at outreach when I worked there is that none of our competitors, nobody in our space, in the sales engagement space, had anything that was unique. If you came out with a feature tomorrow that was unique, it was going to be replicated within 2 days.
Yeah.
With the skill set in the development community, if you came out with something that was like industry shattering, you could guarantee that your competitor was going to figure out how to build it. So, if you had something that was unique, it was only going to be unique for about 48 hours. So you can't sell on features. You have to sell on total value, and like, what is the ROI that you're going to get from working with us as a vendor, and focus on that and that alone. You don't go out and feature sell. You don't go out and sell against your competitors. You don't downgrade your competitors, because competitors make you better. So that's one thing that we never did at outreach was don't we trained our sales reps. Don't go out and bash our competitors. If someone's using our competitor, say, that's great. I'm really glad to hear you're using someone in the sales engagement space. Let me ask you this question, and then ask them a question that would keep that conversation moving. You don't say, oh, well, they're a really terrible tool, or, oh, you shouldn't be using them, because that gets you nowhere. You don't earn the respect and attention of the person that you're trying to engage with. If you focus solely on what it is your solution can solve and the value that you bring to them as a company, then that's where you're going to get the best results.
This has been a really great conversation, Kris. I have actually learned a lot just in this, more than I even learned from you before. It's kind of interesting. It's all really great stuff.
Thanks.
So what's the name of your band?
Oh, the name of it's I guess I wouldn't call it a band. It's a brass ensemble.
Okay.
And this has been a side project for me and a bunch of my colleagues here in the central Pennsylvania area. So kind of the largest city close to where we live is Altoona. Back in the day, it was a huge railroad city in Pennsylvania, which, if you're familiar with Pennsylvania, railroad and steel industries and coal were kind of the top industries back in our heyday. So Altoona is still kind of the central hub for the railroad. So a lot of us live in Blair County, which Altoona is kind of built around. Blair County is built around the Altoona area. So our group name is Altoona Brass Collective.
Okay.
So we are a 21-piece brass ensemble.
Wow.
And we are all either current or former educators. Some of us are retired educators. Some are educators outside of music. We have a chemistry teacher and a guidance counselor who are in our ensemble, but lifelong musicians. And we call ourselves a collective because we all contribute, because we're all educators and we're all musicians. We all contribute to the growth of our ensemble. All of our music is arranged and written in-house. We all work on the different business components of our ensemble to promote and grow our audience and get us more performances. So it's really great for me, because now that I'm not teaching anymore, it keeps me in touch and in tune with my passion, which is music.
Yeah, I love music. I'd love to hear you sometime. You must be on YouTube or something somewhere, are you?
Yeah, we're the best place to find us and keep, if you wanted to keep up with what we're doing and see some of our recordings, is on Facebook, the Altoona Brass Collective on Facebook, and we're also on Instagram. And we're working on developing a website here very soon. Should be out by early August, and it'll be altoonabrasscollective.com.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. I can encourage everyone else to as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Thanks, Kris. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Barb. I appreciate it.